Dr. Jeff talks love. Dr. Jeff talks life. Answers your questions, cuts through the strife. Sex and intimacy, real and true. Evidence-based, made just for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Albaugh. This podcast is dedicated to providing evidence-based information and meaningful conversations that help you improve your sexual health, strengthen your relationship, and enhance your overall well-being. Whether we're discussing intimacy, communication, medical conditions, sexual function, or the emotional aspects of relationships, our goal is to educate, empower, and inspire. This is episode 83, The Anxious Mind, the Intimate Heart, reclaiming connection with yourself and with others. So whether you're joining us live or you're listening later, I just want to take a moment to thank you genuinely for taking time to be in this space, in this place with us. This is all about you, and the podcast only exists because of you. So thank you for being here. As always, I would like to remind you that all are welcome here. Whatever your sexual orientation, whatever your gender identity or your relationship style, this is a space and a place for all of you. I'm so glad that you are here, and you are most welcome here. I already talked about the mission of the podcast, empowering and enlightening you with the information you need and that scientific information that you need so you can live your one miraculous life more fully and with more love. That's really our goal. Today's conversation, wow, it explores a topic that touches nearly everyone at some point in life. Anxiety, right? While anxiety is often thought of as something that affects our thoughts and emotions, it also has a profound impact on our relationships, our intimacy, and our sexual well-being. It affects everything. If you've ever found yourself overthinking, that voice in your head going over and over, right? Feeling disconnected during intimacy, worrying about performance over being present, or simply struggling to be present with your partner in this moment, this is the episode for you. Anxiety can show up in so many forms, and guess what, listener? We all have anxiety. Generalized anxiety. Some of us have some perfectionism. I'm just saying. Fear of vulnerability. We're all afraid of that a little bit. Relationship insecurity, body image concerns, health anxiety, or worries about sexual performance. Whatever its source, that anxiety has a way of pulling us out of this present moment, the only moment we have, and making it difficult to experience the emotional and the physical connection that intimacy requires. You can't really have intimacy unless you're present. So in today's conversation, my guest, Melissa Novak, helps us understand what happens in both the brain and the body and when anxiety takes over and hijacks us, right? We'll discuss why stress and sexual desire often seem to move in opposite directions. Not so good. How anxiety can affect communication and relationship satisfaction, and practical strategies for helping individuals and couples reconnect with themselves, our true selves, and with each other. So, Melissa Novak, I'm so excited. My friend and colleague, I haven't seen her for a while, but it's so great to have her on as a guest. She is amazing. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She's an AASECT certified. You've heard us talk about AASECT and how to find providers through there. She is an AASECT certified sex therapist. She is dedicated to helping individuals and couples build healthier relationships with themselves, their partners, and their sexuality. Melissa specializes in that intersection of mental health, intimacy, and sexual well-being, with particular expertise in understanding how anxiety, stress, and emotional health influence desire, sexual functioning, and relationship satisfaction. So, through her clinical work, through her educational presentations, and her professional training, she empowers people with practical tools to reduce anxiety, to improve communication, and strengthen emotional connection, and to cultivate more fulfilling, intimate relationships. Who doesn't want more of that? I am so excited to have my guest, Melissa Novak, on empowering us with this great information tonight. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so good. And I'm so happy to have you here and that you took time out of your busy practice and your busy life to be here and share your amazing expertise on this topic, which
You are
every
very sweet and generous.
I mean, don't you think everybody, we all need to think about, because we all, anxiety creeps in on everybody and it affects our
I
intimacy.
mean, now more than ever, I don't know many people that are not feeling some vibrations at some point about any aspect of our uh,
Crazy world.
socio-political, personal world. Yeah, it kind of
Totally,
is across
totally,
the gamut.
totally.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so excited to hear your presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to you and it's all you.
Okay. Well, so, I think we were talking a little bit about before we went live how we're trying to take this really big concept and distill it down into some useful nuggets to a pretty general audience. So I'm going to really try to talk a lot about kind of what I would say is where a lot of us are living, which is in worries and problems. And I want to just offer a little bit. Oh, wait.
You're showing up on the screen. Okay. I see your slides.
Oh, I knew something would happen. Let me get to the audio.
We can see your slides and we can see you perfectly, and I can advance for you if you want.
I apologize for that.
Can you see your slides and yourself, or?
Yeah, I can see everything. I was just trying to figure out the audio, making sure you could hear me okay. Everything sounds okay on your end?
Yep, we can hear you
Okay.
perfectly.
All right, great. So I want to distinguish between worries, problems, and disorders. So the issue is that I think a lot of people have worries and problems and wonder about when it reaches a point of disorder. So I think worries are the most frequently occurring sexual difficulty. They're concerns that are inherent in the experience of being human. And worries can be in your romantic relationships, but they can also be in your professional career, this, like I said, the socio-political context. This would be something like, I worry how fast I ejaculate, or I worry about whether or not my relationship is healthy. Then we move into problems. So the problems are actually um, suffering that afflicts groups of people, but there's lots of contributing factors and underlying causes. And so we're seeing more of an impact here. So the worries are now moving into impact. So this would be the pacing of my ejaculation is causing problems for me and my partner in the relationship. Right now, again, it's not the worry that it could be. I have a lot of people that worry that that is, but they don't actually talk to their partner about whether or not that is a actual worry of theirs. But this is an actual problem where, whoever is involved is having experiencing some impact. Then we have actual disorders. So I've got lots of folks that worry about when they orgasm or how they orgasm. But when we actually talk about moving into sexual disorders, these are going to be very specific criteria of those disorders. So they're officially recognized, they're the most frequently studied, but they're also the least prevalent. So I think there's an estimate of like 20 to 30% worry about their erections, whereas only, 5% to 1% actually have a disorder. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how these show up for us. So I like to think about worries and concerns where we're considering the regrets of the past, comparisons of the present, or fears of the future. And I think this understanding where you like to live in your worries or your concerns, right? Are you a rueful person or a regretful person? Are you frequently ruminating on things that you wish would have been different in some way? Are you comparing yourself? Are you checking, whether that be through social media or other mechanisms to see, how are you measuring up, if you will? Or are these fears of the future? Are you worried about how you are, what is going to happen in the future, how things might work themselves out? Problems, this often will be interference in our relationships. This can cause disruption in tasks, responsibility. There's an impact on your mood and well-being. And then disorders, this is going to be one of the more intense impacts that we're talking about. So these are panic disorder, social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, PTSD, pre and postpartum. I think that's something that also is really important to remember, that when we are going through pregnancy or postpartum, there are various drastic shifts, not just in our role and who we are and how we want to potentially be a parent, but also just biologically. And so it's understanding kind of where you're at, I think, can help start to frame up how you might want to move forward. So here are just some examples. I like to talk about anxiety in metaphor. So you're seeing that I'm using a lot of the ocean. And what I usually think about is, let's say that you are in the ocean and it's a crystal clear day. You have lots of energy. You're on vacation. You're feeling really great. And you're just kind of able to float and bop around, right? This is like you kind of as your best self. And then essentially what happens is that as worries creep in, maybe the waves are starting to get a little more intense. Sometimes we are going through some pretty big storms. Sometimes we are going through a hurricane type of experience, and thinking about what do I need to weather this storm rather than how do I prevent a storm from happening. So I think the idea of the ocean really reminds us to be in a space of acceptance of what we are facing, rather than, oh, we're supposed to somehow control the ocean or control the weather. So they're going to leave me. I'm not good enough, whether that be in bed. I'm not good enough to stay with. I'm not good enough to love. What if I get fired? What if I did something wrong and I don't know? Right? These are all worries that people can be chewing on at any given time. And so again, if you were surfing and you are constantly thinking about all the times that you fell off your surfboard, it may be more and more difficult for you to get up and actually enjoy the surfing. If you are comparing yourself constantly to the other people that are surfing, oh, they're doing so much better. Oh, they look so much more professional. Oh, they have such a better technique. You may not be able to, again, enjoy the act of surfing. And then if you're worried about the future, how will this work out? What if I fall? What if apparently, getting shark bit is like a thing that people will risk? If you are worrying about that, that is going to be significantly more challenging for you to enjoy surfing. So I think about this, if we have a general worry in the center, and then we think about kind of the rings of a hurricane going out, right? These are all the different things that a person may experience if they're dealing with some worry. And I chose I'm not good enough, but honestly, you could put any worry you would like in here. And so I'm not good enough often. I see folks that will overfunction. So if they feel like they are somehow in a deficit, they will try to overfunction, which means they will have high standards of unsustainable performance. And what I mean by that is you can't maintain that level of performance. One, because it's not authentic to the human experience. We're all wonderfully messy human beings. And also it's exhausting and it creates often a lot of resentment. Look at me, I'm doing all of this and I'm not getting any sort of, I'm not feeling more secure. I'm not feeling more loved, right? And the person often, the partner or partners may not even realize that that's what's happening. Secret tests or checking. This is where you may do some covert like, man, that person's really attractive. What do you think? And a person says, sure. And then you log that as, see, I'm not good enough. I am not as attractive as that person, right? And they didn't know that that was the actual test. It may also be checking. So this could be anything from potentially violating privacy to going into people's emails, looking at their phones, things like that, to even doing more covert checking. So like, are they going to hold my hand now? Are they looking at me? Are they paying attention to me? Right? Those kinds of checking where the other person doesn't necessarily know that that is the that is something that they are being monitored for. There's a lot of reassurance seeking. So you love me, right? And then it goes on. You love me, right? But you love me. You love me? And you can kind of imagine how that becomes pretty exhausting. One, because the person is having to repeat themselves, and two, they aren't necessarily feeling like they're being believed. You may withdraw, avoid, and check out. You can imagine how that reinforces this feeling of, oh, maybe this person doesn't like me back. And so the partner or partners retreat. You may also be hypervigilant to any distress from the partner. So they're in a bad mood. That must be about me. Maybe I did something wrong. Did I do something wrong? And it could just be that they didn't sleep because their toddler was up way too late last night. And then finally, there's the lose-lose situations. So this is where I see people where they essentially will want something, but then they struggle when they get it. So it will be like, well, we never spend any time together. And the person says, okay, well, let's spend this weekend together. And the person goes, well, now you're only doing it because I asked for it. Right? And so it becomes basically a lose-lose rather than the person heard the need and responded to the need. If we continue with this hurricane, then we can think about the impacts on the mind and the body. So distractions, obviously, if you're ruminating or obsessing about something, you are less present, you are more distracted. It can be that you are actually disconnected from your body or your intuition. So that includes your pleasure, how you actually are experiencing connection, tension and irritability, which makes wanting to connect more difficult for usually all involved. Poor sleep, fatigue, lack of motivation, drinking or substance use, and then sexual inhibition. And what this is essentially feeling like you're on a you're feeling like your brakes are on too much, right? You're not getting to actually receive the sexual like sexual relevant information, right? Things that make us feel sexy, things that might make us feel good. We are missing some of those cues, or you're spectatoring or performing. So all this is great. What do you do about it? So I have a couple techniques that I think are universally really helpful. But here's the deal. I'm going to give you these, but if you're going to use them, I want you to actually write them out. I'm talking like pen and paper, write these out, because slowing your brain down to write, to think, is extraordinarily helpful in facilitating some of this awareness and change that we're talking about. Okay. So, first and foremost, I really want folks to start to identify their patterns and their needs. Which somehow did not make it on this slide. So I apologize. I think that it's actually at the top and it got cut off. So identify the pattern and the need with limits. So, wow, I notice that if I don't hear from my partner all day long, I think that maybe they forgot about me or that they don't really care about me. And so I need a little bit more conversation or check-in, right? And so this could then be a conversation with the partner. And again, it has limits. So with the partner, it's, hey, I really miss you. I would really appreciate, and it would be really nice to have a few more check-ins if that's possible. And what would that look like in your day? And that may be that the partner says, you know what, I'm happy to just kind of text you on my lunch break. Otherwise, I'm going to be really busy, right? So there can be sort of this way of negotiation, and you can have limits, right? So it doesn't, if you're like, basically, I need constant communication, that's fair for someone to say that that's what they want. They just may not be able to get that. And you have to be able to decide whether or not that's going to matter, right? So, if that person can't give that for me, that is a deal breaker. I think really defining the characteristics and behavior of a good partner. So when I talk to couples and they're fighting, sometimes the worry becomes, oh my gosh, if we're fighting, there's something wrong, rather than conflict is necessary and an important part of a relationship and an opportunity for growth. How do I, as a partner, as a good partner, want to show up to conflict? How do I want my partner to feel in conflict? Evaluating roles and expectations. So thinking about how various worries or anxieties might create certain roles. So for some, it could be, well, I'm always the mess and they're my fixer. Anytime that those get too rigid, anytime you always feel like the mess or somebody always feels like they have to be the fixer, that becomes very, very stressful. And so thinking about like, are there times where I can be also the fixer? And what are my expectations of what fixing or being the mess is? And then we get into testing the assumptions. So is it true? What percentage would you give it? So is it 100% true, 50% true? What data are you actually collecting? We know good slides like Teflon, bad sticks like Velcro. What are you actually looking at, right? So if you're like, they don't care about me, do you have a list of things that you keep to remind you of things that they do that are caring? And then will you live through it if it is true? How will you live through it if it's true? Is it useful? So, does this direct you to doing something? Does this build you up, make you feel better, clarify something? Or is it simply just an unproductive worry? That leads us into, is it productive or unproductive, right? Does it provide you direction? Does it provide you opportunity? Or is it just something that you sit with and do nothing with? This is something else to ask yourself, is like, what am I actually going to do with this if it's productive? If it's not productive, it's usually, oh, I'm not going to do anything with that. Is it, I think about this a lot when folks are saying something like, contemplating separation or breaking up, and I ask them, are you willing to actually break up with someone? And they say no, right? Then worrying about whether or not you're going to break up is not productive or useful. Is it universal? So if somebody else was telling you this, giving you this perspective, would you put the same rules, right? Does this work for anybody else? Does it work for your children? Does it work for your friends? Does it work for your family members, your sister, your brother, siblings, right? Do we apply this to anybody else but ourselves or our partners? Carrying it out, actually talking through the feared outcome and how you're going to live through that, what you would do. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, getting help. So if none of these things are really working for you, then it's time, let's get help. And I think in this day and age, all help should be on the table. That includes therapy. That includes medications. Medications are incredible, and there are some really incredible ones out there, and they literally can be a life preserver in a hurricane, right? As much as we might want to get out of the hurricane, having a really good, whether it's a dinghy, a life preserver, something to help you weather the storm, medications are really helpful. And then additional healing options. So do you want to try Reiki? Do you want to try sound baths? Do you want to do yoga? Do you want to do acupuncture? All healing is on the table. Are you going to be open and trying that? And then finally, I will give you a few rules. And I don't really love rules, but a few rules that I often tell my folks when we're getting into some of the couples work we do, or even some of the individual work that I'm doing, which is, are you in the mindset of curiosity, compassion, and openness? So where are you in relationship to those three things? When we're in our worries, when we're in our anxieties, it is often perfectionism, urgency. It is all of these things. And we want to really be much more in a mindset of curiosity, compassion, and openness. So what is it going to take to get you there? If you ask, you need to be willing to hear. Meaning, if you want reassurance, you need to be willing to hear the reassurance. You need to be willing to believe them. Clue in your partner. Let them know, hey, I'm just having a rough day. Just wanted to let you know. Or, hey, I've noticed this pattern and here are some things that I'm working on. Or, hey, this would be really helpful. I think partners that share about their internal experience usually fare a lot better. This is the Gottman technique, which is called a rapport method. Not that that matters, but essentially it's, I feel about what. So you You say, I feel sad when I come home and I am not greeted. I need a hug when I come in the room. And then reminding yourself interdependence is greater than dependence, is greater than independence. So, what I mean by that is we all human beings need human beings. We need human beings from the post office to the amazing garbage truck humans that help us with our trash. We need humans that help get us food, that drive supplies around, but we also need humans emotionally and connectively. And so reminding yourself that we are interdependent. This is not about you being independent or dependent. And then finally, the more we can accept the wave, the more we can be willing to ride the wave. So the more that we can accept that the wave is what it is, rather than wanting it to be something else, we are moving away from suffering into acceptance, and acceptance moves us into a path. And that's it. I was trying to get in to the 10 minutes. I think I went way over, but I also had the technical difficulties. So I appreciate you people bearing with me on that.
All good, all good. Gosh, so many good concepts and things. And I was thinking, I'll start kind of where you ended with how there's so much great research out there.
I am having trouble hearing now.
Oh, you're not hearing?
Oh, there. I got it.
Okay. So I was thinking a lot about kind of where you ended and how there's so much great research out there about how we're hardwired for connection. Daniel Goleman's research on on social intelligence, and that we think we want to be independent, but we are truly all connected to each other and the world around us. And I think that's such an important concept for us to remember, that sometimes you want to hold down in your little space and not deal with anything, but you can't. We all are hardwired. It is not optional for connection with other human beings, right?
Yeah, I would say the level or the requirement of connection can vary from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we really need to acknowledge how much as human beings we rely on each other for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, think about if those things didn't happen, my trash didn't get picked up, my, whatever the whatever job you might think of, and I always say, what could be more important than trash pickup? So it's things that we really do need each other. But also, I was thinking a little bit about going back to earlier in your discussion, talking about that universal feeling of I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy of love and belonging, of pleasure. And that's a really important thing to think about and realize, listeners, is, you so often we're compassionate towards others, but we're not compassionate towards ourselves in knowing that you are inherently worthy of love and belonging.
My favorite explanation of this is someone said, and this goes with my theme. Someone says that when you're on the beach, you don't ask the sand why it exists or if it belongs.
Hmm.
And that sort of inherent belonging
Mm-hmm.
is us.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about whether we belong. We do. I do think there are a lot of systems and aspects of our culture that we are really reckoning with right now, and things are rough
Mm-hmm.
around belongingness and around how people feel belonging,
Mm-hmm.
and how people then feel worthy. And I think thinking about this, if we want to go real big, that fuels capitalism, right? Treating ourselves as some sort of commodity, as having some sort of weight, some thinking of ourselves in hierarchical contexts rather than social circles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
interconnected webs.
Mm-hmm.
That I think facilitates or exacerbates a lot of people feeling like, oh, I must be something in order to, rather than I just get to exist.
Yeah, I just need it's because I always say, I've spent the first part of my life, and I'm sure you too, so busy, and as a human doing, and now I'm trying to figure out how to be a human being, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
it is enough to just exist and be present and be authentic, and I think those are really important concepts. I like how you talk about really kind of learning to identify what are my patterns, what are the things I fall into, what do I do, and then what do I really need, and how can I convey that to my partner. And then I really like a lot of the things you presented about. I'm always working with people in my clinic on challenging negative thinking, those assumptions, those I tell them that voice in your head is a culmination of your past trauma. It is not speaking truths to you most of the time.
Yeah.
Your heart and soul are speaking truths to you, but that voice in your head, that trauma and pain body is speaking trauma to you. So it's a culmination of past traumatic things. And so challenging those assumptions and those negative thoughts is so important to get out of that thinking and get into your body, your pleasure, your body.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of these beliefs that we have were given to us. And as we get older, we get to decide whether or not we actually want to embody them. Right. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I think when I think about lineage and ancestry and like what is passed down, right? And even passed down in culture, I think it's really important for us to understand that there are times where we are given things that as kids we didn't have a choice about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was often told that, especially growing up in the Midwest, that I was, too outspoken because I was a woman and I needed to kind of better know my place. Well, as I've gotten older, in my 40s, I realized that that does not serve me.
Mm.
That isn't who I am, and that isn't what I actually want to carry, right? And so I think being able to understand and recognize these patterns and ask ourselves what we need. I don't think any one person is supposed to meet our needs, no more than I think we meet all of our needs. I think reminding yourself that this is, again, a community effort, it's interconnected effort of ourselves with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what, like you said, it's like you have to stop and think, is this really true for me now? Is this my truth? Or is this just something
Yeah.
I picked up? And then also, does this serve me? You just brought that up now. Does this serve me in my life now? No. To speak, to let my voice be heard, to speak my truth does serve me. So, I think you give a really good example of that. That's great. And then I like a lot of the relationship things. We're always talking on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex about curiosity, one of my favorite words.
So
And then I love that you have curiosity, compassion, and openness, really using those as tools. Are you in a space and a place to talk from curiosity, that I
yeah.
really want to know and understand this situation, or the person I love so much? Are you open to that person you love? Are you caught in your own little world and your own traumas? And and then of course, always bringing compassion and grace, giving people what they
Right.
need rather than maybe what you might think they deserve because of whatever you're upset about. I think those are really important big
Those are
things.
ways that I've had to really learn to pump the brakes. I am much more in my relationships like I want to address this. I want to address it right now, right? And I may not be the most effective. And I typically will tell people, right or wrong, if you're not effective, it really doesn't matter. And
Mhm.
so I'm really trying to ask myself, like, okay, if I'm going to bring this up, if I'm going to actually grapple with this with another person, what is the spirit by which I'm bringing this? And there may be times where I am unable to tolerate waiting, and I have to own that then. I have to say, I am not in a great framework. I am not in curiosity. I am angry. And you can do that too. You can be in that place too. But that is ownership and also thoughtful and respect for the partnership, right? So it's not just about me and my needs, it's an acknowledgement of the whole system.
And then really, like you said, owning this is where I am. This doesn't mean this is your fault. I'm not attacking you. I'm in this space where I am upset. And then I think I love the Gottman techniques and I use them all the time. And it's very awkward when people begin to use those techniques. They're like, it feels weird. I'm like, but what you're doing is not working. That's why
It
we're here.
is the best. People will just shelve awkwardness because, like, name one thing that you've had to learn that you can do well that didn't start off with awkwardness.
Totally, totally.
And
And so they'll
so,
say, yes.
yeah, and I will tell people too with the Gottman technique, try not to use the word you.
Totally.
When you do this, when you said this, it is almost now I almost see it as like a challenge, so I love it. It's like a puzzle to solve, which helps
Yeah.
give me a little distance when the conflict is hot.
Yes.
But my couples, if they'll, it sounds like marbles in your mouth at first, and if I can get the couples to uh, practice this, it becomes so much more effective because the person will say something like, "I feel hurt, anguished, defeated when there are jokes made about my body. And I
And I need,
need to know that I'm attractive." That is a totally different conversation than, "Gosh, why are you saying that?"
and it's
Right
like you
now,
always put me down. You're so critical of
yes,
me.
yes,
It's like this is from the time we started our relationship. You've been very it's all of that. And what it forces you to do is to be succinct, to be to the point. And again, it's difficult. So they're like, I feel you're mean. That's not a feeling.
yeah.
I'll even give them a list. Here's a
The
list of
list.
like tons of
Give
feelings.
yourself a list.
Pick one. Pick a feeling. I feel and find a feeling. And then, you always want to soften your message a little because and sometimes you can't because you're angry, but if you can, because nobody wants to catch that hardball, right? We all want that softened message. And so, but I feel, and what's the feeling? Find it, identify it. When this happens, be specific and don't make it personal. Leave the yous out. I always say when that one finger's pointing, all the rest are pointing back at
Yeah.
you. So make sure it's I feel this when this happened specifically, and I need this. You gave a great example of it, and it does feel very different. And then the listeners are like, well, I feel really weird rephrasing it, but I tell them it does two powerful things. It says I hear you and I want to hear you right. So I'm acknowledging you. And did I get it right? Did I understand what you were telling me? So even though it feels awkward, even though it's really weird, it's been tested over and over. And here you have two people who have
Right.
been trained and use it all the time and know that it works. And the research shows that it works. So it's a
Yep.
great technique if you're trying to figure out how to communicate and how to listen. And
Do
we
it.
talk about
And if you do it and it doesn't work, let me know. I've never had it not work. So
definitely.
my challenge to you all is do it. You can email me and tell me it didn't work.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So I got a couple questions for you. The first one is I've struggled with anxiety for years, and I notice that when my anxiety is high, my interest in sex completely disappears. Is that normal? And is there a way to reconnect with my desire without forcing it?
Well, of course, right? You're going to want or notice where your brain is focused. So if
Mm-hmm.
your brain is focused on anxiety, and usually those are insecurities, not feeling great, right? Not feeling centered. It may be not feeling safe in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, safe and comfortability, we're not talking about domestic violence here. We're not talking about abuse. We're talking about sort of that emotional safety. Um, then, yeah, I would say it's hard to tap into pleasure. But I would say when you're anxious, I bet it's hard to tap into pleasure in just about any realm of your life, right? Things feel a little more muted, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to me, the way that we cultivate anxiety is actually curating it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I mean by that is, what are things that are prompting you to actually feel sexual, to pull you out maybe of the anxious headspace? So is that certain music, outfits, right? Like, is that I'm wearing these earrings that make me feel fancy or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it may be I really love smut or romance novels. It could be fun TV shows, right? But like, what's prompting you to feel some sexual energy? Is it going out dancing? Is it what is that for you? And I think what's harder is that as we get older, those prompts are less and less, and they're filled in with more responsibility. Right? If we think about times where people talk about being very, very sexual, it is usually earlier in their lives. Responsibilities are different.
Mm-hmm.
It is often when all they're thinking about is that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're thinking about like, think about when you first start dating someone and energy is usually a little higher. You're thinking about like, well, where are we going to go? What are we going to wear? What am I going to say? How am I going to, is the kiss going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Do we touch? Do I have matching whatevers? Do I, have I groomed appropriately? Right? Like you are literally prompting that on a, does my breath smell? Like you are asking yourself about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, as you get older, that changes
Mm-hmm.
significantly.
Yeah, and
And not necessarily for a bad thing, just
right.
different.
Definitely. And so, sure, it's normal. And maybe when you're super stressed or you're super anxious, it's not the time. But can you make the time and space? Can you self soothe a little? Like you said, maybe music, maybe meditation, maybe some breathing, getting yourself in a better space and place for intimacy and sex. So, yeah, I think good things. Another question came in for someone who feels embarrassed talking about sex because of anxiety or shame. What's a small step they can take today to begin having a more open conversation with their partner?
That is such a great question. Okay. So here's the thing, shame cannot exist in the light. So the
Mm-hmm.
moment that you bring whatever it is forth, shame can no longer exist. But what I would say is the opposite of shame is pride. So is there anything that you feel like you might have pride in or around or about, right? But there are a thousand questions that you can find on the internet that are about like 100 things to ask your partner. Start there. If you want to start bringing up concepts, start bringing up neutral concepts. And so then it can gradually shift, right? We can shift into aspects about, you know, what's a longing that you're worried you won't experience, right? We can go into deeper, more existential questions, right? These are all ways that we can dip our toe into vulnerability. They don't have to be necessarily, you know, um, I really need to touch this body part this way, which I think that's the problem for me is like that's my Tuesday. I mean, that's literally what I don't know about you.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's kind of what we talk about all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's like, oh yeah, sure, of course you can have that conversation. But you can talk about kissing, hand
I was thinking
holding.
the same thing. I was like, start with something less threatening, like what's your favorite way to kiss, and
Yeah.
where do you like to be
Watch a
kissed?
TV show.
Yes.
Comment on that. Find
Yes.
something, read a book and find a passage that's like very alluring, right? It doesn't have to be super explicit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be like, this is really hot for me. I really like this.
Mm-hmm. Or think of something like, you know, um, normalize it for them. So maybe say, I really love it when you touch the small of my back and walk up behind me and do that. Is there anything I do that you really like, or is there anything I can do that you would really find to be satisfying to you, or whatever? And
Positive
it's a,
reinforcement. Oh, that's nice. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was good. I like when you do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, you need to also set right in a loving tone. I don't really like when you grab my butt, because I feel super self-conscious. It's nothing to do with you. I have my own issues and stuff. So yeah, I think there's so many ways to start the conversation. And the biggest thing, I don't know about you, Melissa, that I always tell people, if you don't start talking about it, you'll never get used to it or get better at it. And you don't have to start talking about intercourse or genitals or anything like that. Just start talking about kissing, hugging, spooning, whatever you'd like. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm reading this book or I saw this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Mm-hmm.
watch it together, right?
Yeah.
And then you can even talk about how awkward it feels
Totally.
or how silly it feels, right? And you can kind of share in that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, we could talk about this forever.
I know.
Such good conversation. But as you had talked about earlier, I'm going to take them through a centering exercise now, and then I'm going to come back to you for whatever your final word or final thought is for listeners, and I'll give my final thought as well. So I'll be right back, but I'm going to get people back in their bodies. Before we end today's episode, I'd like to leave you with a brief centering exercise like we always do. This is how we do it towards the end of the podcast. If you're able, just place your feet on the floor or simply settle comfortably into whatever, wherever you are. Take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Breathing so powerful. Again, breathe in your nose, exhale through your mouth. Slow and gentle. Continue that breathing pattern and let your shoulders soften as you exhale. As you inhale, feel yourself, your body opening. And as you exhale, feel yourself clearing anything that's not serving you, any tension you feel in your shoulder, your back, your pelvis, your knees, anywhere. Allow yourself to arrive fully in this moment as you continue to breathe with me. Gently remind yourself, I do not have to be perfect to be worthy of love. I do not have to be perfect to be worthy of love. My value is not measured by my performance. My value is not measured by my performance. Connection begins with presence. Connection begins with presence. If anxiety has been a part of your intimate life, remember, as you're breathing, that anxiety is not a personal failing. It's a human experience. Healing doesn't happen by forcing ourselves to stop feeling anxious. It happens by learning to respond to ourselves with curiosity, compassion, and patience. This week, I invite you to practice being present during one moment of connection. Doesn't have to involve sex. It might be holding your partner's hand a little longer, sharing a meaningful conversation, offering an unhurried hug, or simply taking a few deep breaths together before bedtime. Small moments of presence often become the foundation for deeper intimacy. Breathe in through your nose and open. Out through your mouth and clear anything that doesn't serve you. Breathe into this moment. And as you move forward, remember, you are so much more than enough. You are so truly inherently worthy of love and belonging. All right, Vic, can you share with our listeners what is up next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy?
In this special follow-up panel discussion to our popular episode on the power of play, Dr. Jeff is joined once again by sex therapist Lena El-Khatib, along with renowned sexuality educator and clinician Dr. Susan Kellogg-Spat, for an engaging and practical conversation about how play can transform sex, intimacy, and relationships. Together, the panel moves beyond theory and into real-life examples of how couples and individuals can bring more curiosity, spontaneity, humor, sensation, and emotional safety into their intimate lives. Join us on August 11th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
Ooh, Vic, that was steamy. But it's going to be such a great episode to follow up on play. We want to get a lot more specific with ideas. You were talking earlier, Melissa, too, about the importance of play, just getting back to play in our lives. And our children, when we're children, we know how to play. So it's going to be a great episode. But this was such a good episode. Thank you for reminding us all about how to really face our anxieties and know that what our worth is. So, final thoughts for listeners.
I don't know. I was racking my brain and then I got really excited about your next week's episode.
Totally.
I feel, yeah, I mean, I think really, if there's only one thing that you take from this, it really is about kind of how do I want to show up? How do I want to weather these storms? How do I want to, instead of the idea of like, how can I prevent this from happening? How could I stop this? How could I avoid this? Right. And so if we can start thinking about like how we can respond to the things that we experience, I think that's a way better place than this idea of like preventing anything bad, right? Building up some resiliency, I guess.
Definitely. And just showing up. The greatest gift you can give anyone is to really, truly show up. And especially with that curiosity, compassion, and openness that you talked about earlier. And that is my hope and prayer for all of you listeners. And gosh, thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your expertise. And thank you, listeners, for wanting to learn, for being curious, compassionate, and open. Thank you, and good night.
Dr. Jeff talks about sex